All right, welcome back to Photoshop. So today I'm going to show you how to create a professional level action. A couple things that you need to know when you create an action. Actions are not perfect. You need to know how to manipulate and change them. This action, though it will work really well, won't work perfectly for every image. We're actually going to add a background blur that you can turn on or off so you can use it. You can blur it more or blur it less or turn it completely off. And sometimes you're going to need to change the direction of the lighting in this. So you're going to have to go into a layer and manipulate it. Or you might have to delete a layer and change it because the color might not be right. Every image is different. This is going to get you in the ballpark, but anybody that tells you this is a one-click action idea is just lost their mind. Photography doesn't work like that. There's no one-click anything in photography. So if you would like to follow along with this exact image, I will give you guys the link down below that you can follow along. However, you can use any image. It's all going to work the same. I have a suggestion. I've already made this video. And when you're making a video, I'm explaining aspects of this action and I'm doing things that you're not actually going to want in the action. So I think if you just watch what I'm doing through the video, and then what I'm going to do in the description, I'm going to actually list how to make the action. And what it will do is it will omit all the stuff that you don't want. So then you can kind of either watch it back through or just try to follow the list to make the action. One other step. In the action, I create a adjustment layer, curves adjustment layer. I make two of them. One is darker and one is lighter. I would label those. I didn't label them in the video because I forgot, but just label the darker one darker and the lighter one lighter. And then when you run the action, it will always show up as darker and lighter, and it will make it easier to identify which layer does what. Before we get started, I need to tell you about an update to the little cursor thing that I use. So the little blue circle that's around it right now. Now, when I left click, it turns orange. And when I right click, it turns green. So anytime you see an orange, it's a left click. And whenever you see a right click, it's a green click. So just a little bit, I'll put that below in the directions as well, so you know what color is doing what. I usually will explain it when I'm doing it, but just so you know why it's changing colors. Left click is orange, right click is green. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do to create an action, and let me go backwards here if you're in button mode, you're gonna need to click this little button right here, and we are gonna come in here and turn off button mode. So button mode is gonna turn off. We're gonna be in this mode. So we're gonna come back down to here to this little thing, and we're gonna click that guy. And we're gonna come down and go to new action. So right there to new action. If you want to create like a set of presets that are all similar to this, you can create a new set and then put the action inside of the set. But in this case, I've got a whole bunch of sets. So we're just going to go new action and cool. So it comes up right here, new action. I've got default actions. In this case, we're going to go down here to toning and retouching, I think. And I'll just go ahead and put those in this location. So we're going to select that. I'm going to give this action a name. So I'm going to call this warm, soft, portrait. All right, so this is for warm, soft portrait. And you'll understand what that means here in a second. I can give this a color. I'm going to give it orange just because that's kind of the color that I'm going to be using. And we're going to go ahead and hit record. Now, everything that I do from now on, it's going to be recording. So I'm going to do my best to explain this and not have to hit too many extra keys, because sometimes I make mistakes when I'm talking and not paying attention and screw up this action too much. So if you see something where there's an undo in an action, it's just me making a mistake. Hopefully I'll clean those up and they'll be okay. The first thing we want to do when we open this image up is we want to duplicate this action, and that is Command or Control-J. And boom, just like that, we've got the new layer. Now the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to actually create a softening effect. This image doesn't need it, but sometimes people might want to soften the background. And with this effect, we're going to create this by turning this layer eventually into a smart object. And that's going to allow us to use smart filters. And with smart filters, it's going to allow us to turn the filter on, turn the filter off. and adjust the amount of blur. So if you don't want to use it, you can turn it off. If you want to blur it more, you can click on the Gaussian blur and blur it more. So it's going to allow you to have some functionality. This is where a professional level action is good. It's going to give you options. However, it doesn't mean you're going to be using every single thing in the action all the time. And it also explains that in action, you're going to need to know how it works so you can edit that action. All right, so I've got this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come on way over here to this guy. We're going to click on the new object selection tool, which I love. It is absolutely the best tool that they've put in years. If anybody has been using Photoshop for a crazy long time and remembers the extract on how you used to have to make a selection and then extract and how horrible it was, this is just like light years ahead. This is just a great tool. How it knows to select this and not this, I have no idea, but it does a wonderful job most of the time. So what we're going to do is then come up here to select subject and just click it. And just like that, it makes a perfect selection. How it does it, I don't know, but that's exactly what we want to do. Now, we don't want the subject selected. We want the background. In this case, it's also going to select this and it's going to blur that. It's all right. You can modify that in the action, but we need it to do a certain thing. And in this case, we need it to select the background. So what you're going to do is come up here to select and go to inverse. So that is Command-Shift-I or Control-Shift-I, most likely on a PC. And now it's selecting the background. Yeah, that's exactly what we want. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come on over here and we're going to click that mask button. So we're going to click the mask button. It's going to make us a mask and we're good. Now we can turn this into a smart object. So I'm going to go out here into this gray area over here. And I'm going to right click. And when I right click, it's going to allow me to convert this to a smart object. And you get that little symbol there. A smart object, if you want to edit it, you double click this and it will open up a new tab and then you edit it and then you save it. I can show you later on how that works. We don't want to do it now because we're creating an action. All right, so cool. So now we've got all that set. Now we can do the Gaussian blur. So we're going to go up here to Filter, Blur, Gaussian blur. Doesn't matter what it is. We'll just do a basic one of like, let's say 10.1. That's what it's going to be. That's going to be our blur. Notice it's blurring this area right here. We don't care about that because we're not actually going to use it on this image. So I'm going to hit OK. And right there, now we've got a mask and we can turn this Gaussian blur on and off. And in this case, I'm going to turn the Gaussian blur off because we're not going to actually use it. So when you use this action, if you decide you want the Gaussian blur on, you can click here. And then if you want to change the Gaussian blur, you just double click the word Gaussian blur. It will take you back in. You can change that number from 10 to 5 to 55, whatever you want. And then it will blur it and save it. That's the power of a smart object. All right, cool. So we've got that. That's the next step. So our next step here is we're going to come over here and we are going to create a new layer. So I'm going to come over here and create a new layer. So our next step, we are going to make an adjustment layer. So we're going to come up here. We've got the curves adjustment layer, by far my favorite. I'm going to go ahead and click on a curves adjustment layer. And what we're going to do is just darken things a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're just going to darken this a little bit. What we're looking at in this image is I just want to darken this edge and we're going to lighten this area. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to leave this white for the action. Right? Normally I would come in and apply this. I could also darken it. It's going to mess the image up a little bit, but it's something that we need to come in and apply. Now, what I can do in this instance is I can stop the action. I could come in here and paint this so it doesn't record this, which is what I want it to do. And I could paint this out. And then we can start the action back up. You don't want to do this part. Okay. So now it only thinks that we set an adjustment layer. It doesn't know that we painted the mask in. We need the mask so we can see what's happening in the image. So cool, we've got that done. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to colorize this. So we're going to come up here to the gradient maps and click on the gradient maps. And that's going to give us this little icon here in the properties. We're going to click on that. And what we want to do is go to oranges, I think. And so let's take a look at this one. Okay, it's backwards. So let's hit OK. And then you're going to come in here and you're going to hit reverse. And then you're going to come back up and we're going to go from normal down to color. And then we're going to reduce this. That looks pretty good. And if you want a different color, all you do is click on this and then come into any of these things here and you can pick different colors. Like you don't have to use this exact one, right? We've got the oranges in here. We could pick a different gradient. I could pick this one instead of this one. Doesn't make a difference. For this image, we're just going to use that. And if you wanted to reverse them, you could reverse them, but we're not gonna. Notice it's going to flip-flop that in the action. These are not things that you want to do. This action I'm going to delete after I'm done because I'm doing all this extra stuff. And it's not really bad, but we don't want that in the action. All right, we've created this gradient. We want this gradient map over everything, so we have similar colors everywhere. This looks pretty good. Now notice I've lowered this to 27%. I did that with the scrubber here. I mean, you can add more if you want, or you can add less. Remember, you can change this stuff at any time because it's an adjustment layer. There's no right or wrong way to do anything. In my case, I just want it about that much. I think that looks good. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create sort of like a light area right here. So what we're going to do is come up here and create an adjustment layer. And all I'm going to do is brighten this. So I'm going to do kind of the opposite. And I'm just going to brighten this. I'm just looking at this area right in here to make sure I brighten this correctly. Now, remember, you might need to come in and change this when you do the action. I'm going to stop the action for now because this part's going to screw it up. I'm going to create a elliptical selection. So I'm going to go make this ellipse here and I'm going to make it really big. And then I'm going to go to select, transform selection. And that's going to allow me to rotate this. You're going to want to just do this manually. If you put this in here to do it, it's never going to work the same for all the images. So we're just going to move this up. So basically I'm going to make it look like there's a light coming in here and shining on our face and just lightening up that area a little bit. I can make this a little bit bigger if I want. Again, you can change this however you want. It doesn't make a difference. So that looks pretty good. We're going to go ahead, click this and apply that. Now I have a feather of 99. I'm going to actually hit select and mask. I'm going to really blur this. I really want a strong blur on this. So let's come in here and get it up to probably 170 or something like that. Otherwise you're going to see a halo or a line there. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. So what we need to do next is we need to add some black to the mask. And because I made a selection, I need to fill this area with black. But right now this area is selected. So I'm going to do that Command-Shift-I to inverse this. And then I'm just going to go to, this is the slow way, edit, fill, black. Remember, it's not adding black to the image, just a mask. We're going to hit OK. And then boom, it adds black to that mask. That's exactly what we want. Remember, we can further go in there. So I'm going to hit Command-D to deselect. And now you can see we're just lightening that area a little bit. And if I decide that I want to lighten that a little bit more, I can come in here and lighten that a little bit more. And if I decide I want to darken this, I can darken this a little bit more. Remember, you don't want to do this when you're making the action. Just go in there, make an adjustment. And then next time when you run the action, that's when you go in there and you adjust that stuff. All right, so we can start the action back up again. So I'm going to start the action back by hitting record. I didn't run it and record it making that mask right there, but it's not a big deal. So we'll make sure that this is selected. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a new blank layer. In this case, we're not going to click the plus because the plus doesn't work as good for actions. We're going to go to layer, new layer, and it's going to give us this little name layer. We're going to call this lens, flare, highlight, and hit OK. We don't need to fill out anything else. And then we're going to create another one. We're going to go layer, new, layer. And we're going to call this lens, flare, color, highlight. Cool. Yeah, I actually want this one below that. So I don't know if this will understand that or not in the action, but you want the highlight on top and the color below it. So let's go ahead and select this one and I'll show you what this does. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make like a lens flare. So it's kind of flaring on our face, but notice I put color. Yeah, I want a color on this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to first pick a color, and I'm going to go down here and grab the oranges so we can get a better orange. And I think we're just going to use something like this. That looks like a good color. It was close to this color in the same area, so we know this is going to match and look good, and we're going to hit OK. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab our brush. We're going to make the world's largest brush, big, large brush. So I want the brush, so when I click, that the brightest area is right here, but it also spills over on her face. So this is not big enough. I want this brush to be like totally huge. And so right about there, that's about good enough. So it's kind of spilling onto her face a little bit. Actually, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So if it disappears, no big deal. All right. And we want to click it into this one. Now we don't want it at 100%. So I'm going to move this down to about 20%, and you're going to see what's going to happen. I'm going to click and it makes that little highlight. And then I'm going to move out towards this direction a little bit more and click again and click one more time. So 3 times I clicked, it made this soft little yellow highlight. I'll turn this on and off so we can see it. Yeah, it's saving in here, so don't do that stuff. All right. Then we're going to click on the top one. We're going to do the same thing, except for this time we want a bright highlight. So we're going to come here, we're going to pick this color, and we're going to hit OK. So now we've got this brighter white. We're going to do basically the same thing, except for we don't want our brush to be as big. We're going to really wash this out. And you want this on top of the color layer, because when I click, notice it's going to whiten that up. And then I'm going to click again. I'm going to make this smaller. I'm going to click again and click again. So now we've got like this highlight coming out this way. And you can do these and make these however you want. So you'll see what we're doing here. And if you do it too much, remember you can always lower the opacity of a layer so it's less of the effect. In this case, I just want to leave it at 100. Now, that is basically the action. So what I'm going to do is I can stop the action. Now, if I wanted to modify the colors a little bit, we can do that. I can either put this in the action or not in the action. So in this case, I'll just put it in, but it's your choice whether you want to do this. So I'm going to hit selective color, which I don't use a lot. And I'm going to modify yellow. It's a little bit yellow. I want to basically turn my yellows more red. So notice I can come in here and manipulate those colors. If I want to make those yellows a little bit more red instead of green, I can come in there and change them. You can do it in the magenta areas. I can bump magenta. And then my yellow, I can suck some of that out if I want a little bit. And I can just modify that color. So if I turn this on and off, you can see it's just modifying that color a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and hit stop. And that's going to stop that action. And basically, we're done with the action. So I can come back here and I could click and go back to button mode. Or in this case, we're just going to scroll back up and go click right there on warm soft. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to delete all this stuff. So we're just going to select everything that we did here, and we're going to hit delete, and boom, we're back to the beginning. So now we can test our action out. I have it selected, and then I'm just going to hit play, and that's going to run through. It's going to do some of the stupid things where I'm inverting and hiding and showing things, but you won't see it because it's going to run through so fast. So we're going to hit play, and boom, just like that. Did all that really cool stuff. Now remember right here, if we wanted to change the Gaussian blur, we can come change that Gaussian blur and turn that on. Now remember, I don't want the blur here. So if I want to remove the blur, all I need to do is go to this mask, grab the color black, grab my brush. It's too big. Make this backed up to 100%. I'm going to click, shift click. That's just a quicker way to draw a straight line. So you click once, hold shift, click again, it draws a straight line. And now it's taken that out of that area by painting into the mask. So now we just have that soft blur that we see right here on the background. You can't see it a lot in a video. This is already blurred too much. This was already blurred pretty good. It's not something that you'd have to do, but that's how you do the smart blur. Now, remember in the actions, we did this curve right here. So it was darkening. And then we also did this curve right here where it was lightening an image. We need to apply a mask to that. I didn't do it in the action because every single image is going to be so different. There's no sense applying a mask because you're going to have to change it anyway. So it's easier just for me to leave it white or black and then go in there and apply it. So in this case, we had this, which is darkening. So it's darkening the whole area. Okay, so I'm gonna hit Command I at this point, take that out, grab my white brush, and now I'm just gonna darken the areas where I want that to be. Need the color white, and so we can come in here, and this was the area that we want to darken. So we've done that. Then we're gonna come up here, which is to the lightened area. We're gonna Command I, hit invert, and I made a big, huge, giant selection last time. So what I did was I took this. Remember, we weren't going to feather this a lot. So I think I did 171. And we're going to draw this out here, make this giant ellipse. Then we're going to go to select, transform selection. You get quick at this. Hey, you could easily paint this in with a big soft brush as well. So I don't want you to think that you have to do this weird transform selection. It's just a different way to do the same thing. So we're just going to go ahead and move this. That looks pretty good. Now, remember, we just want to fill. So we're going to fill with white. So in this case, I can just fill with white. I'm going to hit Shift Delete, which is my fill command. Fill command for a PC is weird. It's like Shift F5 or something like that. So we're going to fill that with white. That's just going to apply it into the mask. And just like that, we've now brightened this area. So we've done those two little sections there. So right here, we have the lens flare that we created. So that's where you're going to create your lens flares. So you need to get your brush. You need to pick your colors, create those on the blank layers because they don't get applied, okay? They're just blank layers at this point. Notice when I turn them on or off, nothing happens. When you do these, you need to manually come in here and paint them. Every image is going to be different because you might use a different gradient map, so you might need to pick a different color. This is why I say there's no such thing as a one-click action. This does a lot of the work for you, but it won't make your image perfect. Well, hopefully this video has been helpful to everybody to get you on your way to learning how to make your own professional style actions. Remember, you can go back through this video nice and slow and start and stop and make sure that you get everything that I did. I'll have this exact same image. So if you want to go ahead and use the exact same image, you can use that as well. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. We need to get our subscriber counts up and our view counts up for this channel. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave those below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe.